Is your basil plant exploding, or maybe that little pot at the store tempted you again? Either way, this is the perfect moment to make pesto. It's pantry friendly, customizable, and so much better than store-bought. Let's make that bold green sauce that tastes amazing on everything. Hi friend, come on in. Making pesto is so easy, and this is the pesto I make when my garden goes into overdrive. I'm working with fresh basil from my garden, walnuts I toasted in the oven, then gently rubbed between a towel to remove some of the excess skins, a Parmesan cheese blend because it is what I have, olive oil, and a little salt and pepper. This obviously isn't authentic. I don't have pine nuts, but if that is something you keep in your pantry, go ahead and gently toast them up to make for a richer flavor. I just put out a video on toasting nuts and seeds if you need a little help with that. I have a very small food processor, but this is a nice small batch that works perfectly for this. Definitely scale up this recipe if you have a larger food processor. I want to get my nuts in here and pulse them to a very coarse texture. I want larger pieces here. I don't want to make nut butter. It's better to leave them a bit chunky at first. You can always pulse more later, but you can't undo nut butter. I added in my whole garlic at this point as well to get that processed. Because I have a small food processor, I am going to put my basil in batches to make sure I get it pulsed down and not have any unprocessed leaves remaining. This is another reason why I didn't want to process my nuts too much, as I knew I would have to process them further with each step. The goal is to have some texture and not a smooth green paste. Now that I have my leaves partially processed, I want to add in a little salt. I can taste and adjust later, but this is to get some salt in. I also put in a small amount of pepper. This is obviously personal preference, but a little pinch doesn't affect the flavor that much. And I want to get my cheese in. Use a quality Parmesan or a blend, whatever you have. Just make sure it tastes good enough to eat on its own. I don't always have a nice Parmesan in the house, but I typically have either a Parmesan or a Parmesan blend that I have found in the clearance section for applications like this where the quality of the cheese makes a difference. Otherwise, I use the dried stuff in the shaker bottle. For the olive oil, I am going to add a little in to get things started. Again, if you have a good tasting oil, this is the time to use it. I try to have a little good olive oil on hand and a lighter olive oil for the times where I don't need the more robust flavor. This is a great time to use a robust flavored olive oil if you have one. I want to pulse this together, making sure I am scraping down the sides so everything is incorporated fully. Definitely scrape to the bottom if possible to get any trapped nuts fully incorporated. Since I can't stream in my olive oil, I am adding in a tablespoon at a time until I get the texture and consistency I want. I want this to mostly cling to the spoon and not drizzle off or be too dry. This is a personal preference. If you want something a little runnier for dipping bread into, then adjust the amount of oil. If you want to swap in spinach, parsley, or garlic scapes, you can create some really unique variations. A little splash of lemon juice can also brighten the flavor. And if you don't have Parmesan, a pecorino or nutritional yeast for a vegan version can work in a pinch. Work with your pantry. I am storing mine in a small mason jar with a thin layer of oil on top to prevent browning, because air is the enemy here. If you're taking some out, pour off the oil, use what you need, and then add the oil back to keep it protected. This pesto freezes great, but the top layer can still brown without a barrier. If you'd rather not use extra oil, try pressing plastic wrap or parchment to the surface before closing up the jar. I used a vacuum sealer after adding the oil layer, and that kept mine green in the fridge for over a week. Definitely something to consider if you want a longer storage option. This pesto pairs great with pasta, obviously, but also shines in panini sandwiches, roasted vegetables, or even tossed into a pasta salad. How do you like to use pesto? Share your favorite combos below so we can all try something new. You might like this garlic bread video too. Pesto's amazing either spread on top before baking for a subtle infused flavor or dipped for a fresher flavor. If you like pantry forward recipes like this, be sure to subscribe. I've got even more fresh from the garden ideas coming soon. Thanks for hanging out with me.